Hey, I'm Guy Powell, and welcome to the next episode of the Backstory on Marketing and AI. And if you haven't already done so, definitely visit ProRelevant.com and sign up for more of these episodes and podcasts. I'm the author of the upcoming book, The AI Marketing Machine. And you can find out more information about that at marketingmachine.prorelevant.com. Today, we're going to have a great conversation with Mark Donnigan. He is a virtual CMO for B2B tech, and we were just talking about some of the cool stuff, and we had to stop because we wanted to get back into actually recording what we were going to be talking about. So let me tell you a little bit about Mark, and then we'll dive right in. So Mark Donnigan, he helps early and growth stage B2B startups scale faster with fewer resources. Through frameworks like the Lean Content Engine and Marketing Pod, he delivers high impact marketing execution that drives real revenue without bloated teams. And, when you're talking with startups, revenue is everything. So fantastic. He's definitely well positioned for that. Welcome, Mark. So good to have you.
Hey, it's great to be here, Guy. Thank you for the invitation. Really look
Yeah.
forward to, I want to hear, I want to talk about your book, The AI
Uh,
Marketing Machine. I mean, that sounds cool. Right
Well,
up my alley.
fantastic. We'll do that in another interview. I'll
That's
get you back
right.
on, and
That's
then
right.
you can interview me. So,
Yeah, there we
absolutely.
go.
Well, it's funny, and sorry, we'll get off, but the book is not a compilation, but it used a lot of what was learned in these interviews to
Mm,
generate content for the book. So, all
yeah.
of this stuff is a big piece of that. So,
Yeah.
tell us what's your backstory on AI and marketing? You've been doing a bunch there, and so what's really cool that's going on?
Yeah, well, so my backstory, I'm actually a seller that found my way into marketing. I am one of those left brain, right brain people. When I was 12, I discovered my school's Apple II. So right there, I'm dating myself, but and I taught myself basic, and I guess you could say I was a geek. I was definitely a geek. My dad worked at Hewlett Packard, and so I kind of grew up. He was an electrical engineer, so grew up in that environment. I ended up foregone conclusion that I'd go into a computer science program. So, went to Colorado State University at the time, had a really, very solid computer science program. But after a couple years, the music bug got me, and I wanted to be a rock star more than I wanted to go work for Hewlett Packard, you know. So I dropped out of school, ended up going to music school, and had a lot of fun. Played with some great people and did some fun things, but discovered that you can play at a pretty high level and still be broke. you know so I realized, okay, I want to make some money, and found my way into sales. And then that really just connected into marketing, because I firmly believe that the silos, and this is really true today, but going back, 6, 8, 10, certainly 15 years ago or 20 years ago, when I started really my professional career, there were silos, right? There was the sales team, the sales department, and there was marketing. And there was the war between the two. I never believed that. I always thought they're integrated, the closer that they work together, because as a seller, I experienced firsthand when you have marketing that's aligned, with driving revenue. It's not that your job is easy, but it gets easier, and you definitely can get that, momentum behind you. So, that pulled me into then just, over time, more and more focusing, and then eventually running teams and building teams, and eventually just, saying, okay, I'm a marketer, and I'm proud to wear that badge. So The whole AI connection, I guess you could say, given that, I gave you the backstory that I am a kind of a technologist, actually I am very much a technologist. And so when ChatGPT, came out, OpenAI released it, like everybody, I jumped right in. And candidly, I maybe did what a lot of people did, write me a blog post was my prompt. And what I got back was pretty mediocre, pretty lackluster, right? And so I can remember I played with it for a couple days and I went, well, this is like a toy at best, and just completely ignored it. Just completely ignored it. Just sort of, meanwhile, the buzz is growing. And a couple months after, somebody that was working for me produced a document and casually said, well, I'm a little embarrassed to say, but I actually used ChatGPT to produce this. And I looked at it and I went, well, this is pretty good. Like, really? And from that moment on, I was fully vested, fully vested, jumped in with both feet, and have been wading in the waters ever since. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of had a similar experience to you where, you look at it early on and you go, well, this is interesting, but it not quite there yet. And then all of a
yeah,
sudden,
yeah,
ChatGPT 3.0 comes out and then now
yes,
4.0 and, pretty
yeah.
soon 5.0, I guess. And you go, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah,
And
and you can remember, I'm sure you went through that phase of like prompt engineering where, it was fun, to
mm,
really get under the hood and understand how to craft the messages and, i.e. the prompts and, the differences that it would make. And, prompting still matters, by the way, but it certainly has changed a lot with the more advanced models, the latest reasoning models. But yeah, that was also part of the secret sauce, was knowing how to prompt it.
yeah.
So
What I did was early on, well, I guess not that early on, I would ask ChatGPT was what's the prompt if I want to ask this question?
yeah,
and
yeah,
it it was a much better start than potentially what I would put in and reduce the
sure,
number of iterations
sure.
that might need to be done. So AI powered marketers, how do you see that as working against or for or adding value for all of us that have maybe 10-year plus experience
Yeah.
and really using this AI now to help people kind of even the playing field.
Yeah. Well, I think first of all, it's important to know that philosophically, and it's true. My background really almost exclusively, in fact, really exclusively, is in startups, earlier stage companies, which, by definition means smaller teams, means fewer resources. You have to figure out how to do more with less. There's just by definition. So it is true. I've never, never run or been able to build a marketing team where it was 35, 40, 50, 60, 80, 100. I heard the other day HubSpot has 600 marketers. Like I can't even fathom what you would do with 600 people. So given that, clearly you build processes and you develop frameworks around what you know and what's available, right? So that's my disclaimer to say that in that context, I just have I've experienced firsthand that small teams can outperform big teams, you know? And so I brought that in then to, AI and being AI powered. And what, the tools do and what the technology does is really a couple things. First of all, it allows now that small team to punch way above their weight because now rather than being small and as efficient as you can be with, four, five, six humans, now it's four or five, six humans with mastery of the tools who now can produce the equivalent of, whether it's a 10x or 20x or whatever. I don't want to get hung up on that. But the fact is that now you get acceleration. So I think that the world that we're in now, and not I think, this is the world that I'm actually operating in and even building, is where it is a small team of, we can have an interesting discussion of whether marketers now are T-shaped or if they're really, more generalists. In other words, what kind of marketer do you need when you're dealing with tools? It's an interesting, almost a debate, because I think you could take both sides and I have a view on it. But the fact of the matter is that now you're able to come in a small team of specialists who know their market using the tools and just literally run laps around the processes and just the slowness that comes when you have approvals and when you have bigger teams and you have this person that handles this aspect, of publishing, content. And then, oh, but now we need this other team or we need this other person. And then there's this other, and then there's an approval gate. And, some people listening are going, oh boy, you're describing my world, And so AI has the potential to completely cut through all of that, not only bring efficiency, but also just improve quality. A lot of people have had experiences, maybe still are having, where they say, well, it's pretty good, but not good enough, or it falls down in enough cases where I don't feel I can really rely on it. In most cases, you can look at those situations and you can find either a misapplication of tools. So they're just, maybe they just don't know that there's actually a better tool that they should be using, or they're just not exploiting the tool properly, fully. And there can be other factors, but in almost every case now, with the state of where the LLMs are, you can get absolutely phenomenal results.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, so one of the things that you mentioned early on was that you were a musician, and unfortunately, you can be a phenomenal musician, and yet you don't make it big time. And one of the things that I see kind of in the future is with some of the tools that you're talking about, you could now have in a category a bunch of marketing teams using these tools and become significantly better.
yeah.
And so, the question then is does that generate more demand for the whole category,
Mm,
and across all the competitors, or
yeah.
does it just now make it just as hard as it was without AI,
Yeah.
to kind of, play one against each other and keep your share going? Any thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, I think, this comes back to a little bit of a perennial question, which right now is all over LinkedIn and, a lot of marketers are debating and thinking about. And that is, what does content look like in a world where it's getting increasingly easier to, push a button? And I only say that figuratively because, we're definitely still a long ways away, but it's getting easier. The tools are getting better. The models are getting much more advanced, where now you don't have to be a prompt engineering expert. You can write a relatively simple prompt and in some cases get back an extremely usable, maybe you wouldn't say an A level, but maybe a very solid B level article, right? Or a blog post. And
Yeah.
so what does it look like in a marketing world where in certain sectors, everybody can just push a button and what comes out is actually pretty good. I think that it still comes down to we are selling. I adopted years ago, this idea that there really is no B2B. And I work exclusively in B2B, so business to business, technology companies, startups. But there really isn't B2B, it's H to H, it's human to human. And if you kind of go back to that idea, and if you buy into that with me, and you say, well, yes, of course, at the end of the day, we're not selling to these, business entities. We're selling to a human who represents and is making decisions on behalf of their business. But at the end of the day, they don't switch off their emotions. They don't switch off their logic. They don't switch off all the other things that drive them to make decisions in their personal life just because they stepped through the front doors of their office, into their office building. So if that's the case, then let's go back to first principles. What do we need to do as marketers to get somebody to make a decision to buy our product, use our service, license our technology, whatever that is that we need them to do? And the simple answer is we need to connect to the problem that they're trying to solve, that they need solved. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
and so now, how do you do that? Well, that's maybe a little bit easier in some industries, some markets. Maybe it's a lot harder. It's a lot more complex of a story, based on, again, the industry, the market, the technology. I mean, there's always variables there. But if you take it back to what is the problem that our solution is uniquely equipped to solve, and then we build content around that. We build our story frameworks. We build our messaging frameworks. We tell the market whether or not I pushed a button and got an article to maybe 70%, and then me as a marketer or a writer on my team or a freelancer, whoever took it the rest of the way, it kind of doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, it's the editing, it's the final result. It's not whether AI got me to 60, 70, 80, or 90% of the way, you know? And I think where marketers are still getting hung up is that some are viewing it as a zero or a one. Either I use AI, I push a button, I literally copy the output, I paste it into LinkedIn, and I hit publish and I move on. Or they say, well, if I need to do editing, well, then what good is AI? In other words, a zero or one. In reality, it's an incredible collaborator, AI is,
Yeah. Yeah. No,
and
and
so
I
that's,
absolutely, yeah.
I think that, ultimately the way to view it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think and I think that's how the marketers are kind of evolving to that. And it'll be interesting to see how then ChatGPT 5.0 and 6.0 and
Yeah.
how those evolve.
Yeah,
But
for
I
sure.
don't think though that it'll be that easy for one of these engines to be able to do a direct copy and paste. I
Yeah.
think there's always got to be
Yeah.
a review process. Certainly in a larger organization, you have to have the legal review, but nevertheless, you are going to be able to get pretty far pretty fast.
Yeah.
Now you have this concept of a marketing pod
Yeah.
and the marketing pod approach. Tell us what you mean by that.
Yeah, well, that's actually super interesting because the marketing pod came about through the years as I have worked. I both worked independently as a virtual or a fractional executive, as well as joining companies. So I have almost equal experience, in both ways of working, I guess you could say. What I found is, especially when I would advise a company or get involved, in sort of a fractional or virtual way, is that here's how almost every, engagement or relationship would go. The first 90 days, it was a match made in heaven. You come in, you're able to make immediate impact, help them with their plans, build out a roadmap, everything that, especially in a startup, generally the companies I work with are founded by technical founders. And so, they can build products, they can build technology. They don't know how to market or sell it. And that's usually why they engage me is, they've reached some sort of a wall, or, they're struggling in that area. So they find me and we start to work together. But in almost every case, and the those in the audience who are fractional executives now are going to say, oh yes, this is my experience too. You reach the problem where they go, this is amazing. And then the next, when you hand them, the framework, the roadmap, the marketing plan, then the very next question that CEO or that founder says is, now what do I do with it? What do I do with it? Meaning, like, hey, I've got, this kind of early person in the company who bears the title of marketer, marketing manager. They're really diligent. They really want to do a good job, but they don't have any of the experience to do this. They can't implement it, you know, or I don't have anybody. Or, and then it gets into, well, I'll help you hire them. Okay, fine. Maybe I have the budget to hire, but now that's going to take us 3, 4, 5 months to go recruit, to onboard. I brought you in for immediate impact. And
Yeah.
every fractional executive can relate to this. So I was actually very fortunate in that I didn't have a lot of, sort of short, sort of revolving doors, situations, but I just increasingly found myself always sort of scrambling, like, well, let me make a few phone calls, let me reach out to my network. And in a number of cases, I was able to bring in people I'd worked with. In some cases, I was able to place them, meaning, it's like they got directly hired so we would find a way to fill it. But I just stepped back one day and went, this is crazy. Why don't I have a little team? Now, interestingly enough, it all lines up with 2022, 2023, ChatGPT coming on the scene. And so, as I began to, begin to really explore this and started, building relationships and actually had hired a few people to work directly for me, building some things that I was doing just personally, even starting with my LinkedIn profile. Because I realized I was busy supporting everyone else, and my LinkedIn profile was kind of falling down. The what is that? The cobbler's shoes, it's like everybody else's shoes are fresh and new, and and the kids' shoes are not. So that's where I started, and that's what pulled me into this whole concept of the marketing pod. Marketing pod's super simple. It is a team with a very clear mandate and framework that is AI first, that I can bring along with me for the companies that I support, the teams that I work with. And I don't support a lot at any one time. I'm not building an agency, which is also very different, from what a lot of people are doing, where they do this. It's sort of like, hey, this is my team I bring in, and I kind of place them at all these different companies. It's really about bringing about myself joining, bringing my expertise, and then, having the resources to say, and oh, by the way, this is now what we're going to implement. So that's
Yeah. And
the
that, yeah, that makes so much sense because you're so right. I mean, when you're in a startup, that it's all about revenue. And okay, great marketing plan, but where's my first lead or where's my first deal, that's going to come from
Bing,
that. Yeah.
bingo, bingo.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this also, I know this isn't the subject, but this also is why there is in my observation, why there's a revolving door in the marketing leadership
Mm.
chair inside so many companies. By the way, not just startups, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
startups, it's really pronounced because, the problem is there's often a disconnect in what the job description and what's being asked for by the candidate. So that founder's saying we need someone to come in with a vision, who can build a plan, who can, and so they're saying all the things that an experienced marketing leader goes, well, hey, that's me. Like I spent the last 12
Yeah.
years building marketing plans, hiring teams, leading teams. Like I'm your person. The problem is they come in and on day three, exactly, the CEO is like, hey, that's awesome. Marketing plan. Let's talk about that later. So, how are you going to get me 50 leads? My sales team is starving, and, and,
Total
and
mismatch.
a
Total mismatch
total,
of, yeah.
absolute total mismatch. And,
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things that I've seen as well is, you think about AI and marketing execution and tactics and strategy, and there seems to be different levels or layers of AI in marketing. So, based on what I've seen you talk about and some of the things, it sounds like you've got a pretty good structure there. Tell us about what you've done to structure that.
Yeah, so I think everything comes back, to build versus buy, right? And I'm talking about the tools now. But it's build versus buy, and there's very good reasons to buy technologies and tools and solutions, and there can be very good reasons to build it. Some of it can be, just the knowledge and maybe background of the marketer. So what's super interesting is that I am finding the marketing leaders who are really thriving today, and I'm thinking of a couple, and a lot of these people are the ones that they're found on LinkedIn. They're publishing a lot of content. If you go look at their backgrounds, you'll find out they're engineers. You'll find out they actually do not have classic marketing backgrounds. In fact, you'll look at their education and be like, this person probably didn't take a business class, at university or college in their whole career, and here they are running a massive marketing. How is that possible? Well, it's possible because we now live in a world where those who can marry the creative with the logic, and can span and understand the buyer's journey, and then can map the creative, i.e., the content that is needed to support the selling process, the decision process, but then go actually implement the tools, or at least be a part. They don't have to be designing the tools, but know enough to be able to say, hey, this technology is right for us here. This other technology is not. This tool will work. Hey, it'd be better to build it. They are the ones who are really thriving in this new world.
Yeah.
So I started out by saying, when I was 12 years old, I started teaching myself basics. So clearly, I kind of come from that background. My observation as well about, and I'm intentionally not going to name the platform, although I'll say enough that everyone will know who it is. But there's a very well known marketing automation platform, which I have brought into every company I work with. It's the de facto standard, especially in technology. The founders are amazing. They are AI first and very much leaning into it, adding AI throughout their platform. But I'll tell you, I've used it, and like their marketing mix solution is doesn't work that well. All of the criticisms that marketers have of, yeah, I tried it to write my blog post, but it was okay. The problem is that they're a platform needing to build for however many tens and tens and tens of thousands of companies, and they're public. So, they've got to build, right, for for everybody, from the local roofing company to the local hair salon, to the tech startup, to the Fortune 50, that might use them. So by building, what I have found is that I am able to optimize not only the workflow to suit my specific needs, but I'm able to do things like, for example, I have an auto podcast. One of the podcasts that I have is 100% AI. It's all 11 labs. We have a very sophisticated mechanism of different LLMs that are actually creating the script for each section of the podcast. Now, still, you would listen to it, and most people are very blown away. And I've even had, a few people comment like, really? That's it. Like, I had no idea. I'm like, well, thank you. There's some little clues there that, that most people pick up on and go, I don't think that's actually Mark talking. But compared to the other commercial solutions that we evaluated, it's head and shoulders above.
Mm.
Why? Because I'm able to build it for my very, very specific needs. And I'm in 100% control of the entire workflow. So there isn't anything that happens in there that's sort of like, I'm stuck with, with how this works or that works. My observation is that I think marketing teams are going to have developers and need to have developers that are robotic process automation experts, so RPA engineers, and also just know the low code, no code frameworks and can build. Those teams that invest in that are just going to outrun everybody else because while everybody else is using commercial tools that might get them 70% of the way there, and most people will just settle for that, these other teams are going to be able to get 80, 90% of the way there, and consequently they're going to be more effective, in the market.
Yeah, and
So
that makes so much sense. And I don't know, I think it was even pre-COVID when marketing data and marketing IT investments overtook the rest of the company IT investments.
yeah.
And so, if that's true, and does who cares when the actual transition was? But if
Exactly.
that's true, then you definitely need that. You definitely need that capability of low code, no code, or even high code. Who cares? Just give me just give me something that's going to give me a real competitive advantage. And
Exactly.
that's where I think too, that's where, it used to be the four P's: product, price, place, and promotion, but now it's all about your data. And if you
Yeah.
can get something of real value out of your data, that is an enormous
Yeah.
competitive advantage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mark, one last comment, and then unfortunately we got a break.
Absolutely.
But yeah, what any other last comments before we break?
Well, I think, in the sense of all of this stuff we're talking about around AI, is you need to be using it. You need to be, I'll even use the word experimenting. Mark, we're all busy, right? We have a lot of competing priorities, and it's easy to, kind of get excited, listen to a podcast or watch a YouTube video or read a LinkedIn article and be like, wow. And then you jump in and then you have kind of a lackluster experience and kind of put it on the shelf. And I say that from experience because that's, as I said, I've done that many, many times myself. But I really, really encourage the audience to press in, and especially when you have, maybe a less than desirable experience with a tool or a technology or an LLM, like go do the research, find out, is it because I didn't use it correctly? Is it because I'm using the wrong tool for what I'm trying to achieve? And go learn because that learning right now, it's going to feel like, oh, I'm kind of wasting time. It may even feel like you're playing a little bit, like, oh, I should be doing work right now. I promise you that if you stay committed to that process, and as long as you learn and adapt and use the knowledge to actually get someplace where you can use the tools, you will wake up one day and find that you have such an advantage over,
Yeah.
other marketing leaders, other marketers, wherever you are in the organization, in your career or your career aspirations. You'll have such an advantage. But if you don't start now and if you don't stay committed to it, you don't catching up with this stuff only gets harder as the days go by and the weeks go by.
Yeah.
But it's still early enough. We're still three and a half years in, right?
Well,
It's
I don't know about that
still
three and
early
a
enough.
half, but I'd say it's maybe a year in or so. But because it's kind of, certainly there was a little bit of noise going on 2 or 3 years ago, but it wasn't
Yeah.
that hockey stick up until
Yeah.
maybe a year ago. Mark, thank you. I've got to cut us off here. We
Absolutely.
didn't even get to talk about moving and relocation, but
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
know we both have
that's
experiences with
yeah,
that.
bad experiences. But in
Yeah.
any case, thank you so much. Where can folks reach out to you and learn more about you and what you're doing?
Yeah. So go to growthstage.marketing. It's a dot marketing domain. So just growthstage.marketing, a ton of resources, many books, look at the blog, look at the podcast section. And by the way, little wink, wink, and a little hint, you can assume that AI fingerprints are all over the website and the content, which is to say that if you look at it, you say, wow, how does this guy have all the time to produce it? Yes, there's a team behind it. Yes, there's humans that have written and copy edited and all of that. But make no mistake, you are seeing the impact of AI there. And I get very good feedback,
Yeah.
about the quality and what we produce.
Fantastic.
So,
So that's
yeah,
growthstage.marketing,
correct.
growthstage.marketing.
That's
Mark,
right.
thank you again so much. And for the audience, definitely stay tuned for many other videos in this series of the backstory on marketing and AI. And please visit marketingmachine.prorelevant.com and learn about more about one of my upcoming book, The AI Marketing Machine. Mark, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you, guys.